This month, Riot Games introduced a lot of new games for us to jump on. We're getting League of Legends for mobile, we're seeing an expansion for TFT, we're also seeing a Project A FPS that they're working on. But for today's video, we're going to talk a little bit about Legends of Runeterra, the new CCG card game that they are working on in the universe of League of Legends. Now, upon first glance, a lot of people were criticizing Legends of Runeterra for being essentially a Hearthstone clone. But before they shut down access, I was able to get into the game and play a bunch of rounds myself. And I can tell you that it's actually a great evolution on the core gameplay that is the CCG. It incorporates a lot of the mechanics that I love about games like Magic the Gathering, as well as some of the simplicity of Hearthstone to create its own new version of what the CCGs are. Now, Riot is trying to do something different with Legends of Runeterra in that they are trying to take on a different monetization model than some of the other CCGs on the market. Using Hearthstone as a comparison point, it has fallen under criticism over the last few years for being just too dang expensive for most players. In fact, some of the Hearthstone expansions require players to spend upwards of $400 or $500 in order to be competitive in the constructed gameplay. So what they're doing with Legends of Runeterra is a little bit different. They have already come out and announced that they will not be having booster packs or card packs in the game. So you will not be just randomly buying through cards. The way they described it is you'll be able to unlock cards by playing in a very free-to-play sense. You'll be able to select one of the regions that the cards exist in and then start unlocking those cards as you play.
Victory or defeat, each battle brings experience and progress. Choose which region you explore first and unlock the cards that call to you, changing regions as often as you'd like. As you advance, you'll collect new allies, spells, and champions. More than enough for multiple decks. You'll also come across wild cards, which can be turned into any card you want. No guessing required. Alternatively, use the shards you earn and the coins you've bought to acquire cards from the store. How you get cards is your choice. Once a week, the vault opens. Experiment with an abundance of new cards to discover your playstyle and craft your strategy.
They've also mentioned that they're going to do something where they limit how many cards you can unlock per week, so no one can get too far ahead of anyone else. And I think these types of things have been tried multiple times in the past. Most of them met with some success, but none of them have been a knockout. So I'm very curious to see how this game will hit the market and also how it will monetize. Now, I've spent a lot of time, over 5 years, working on free-to-play titles, monetizing them, working on cosmetics, looking at the sales and the analytics to figure out how a game can make a lot of money when it is free to play. And so I have doubts that they're going to be able to monetize enough off cosmetics and other free aspects in the game to keep this as a competitive, viable product for their repertoire, but maybe they have a small enough team and low enough overhead that they're willing to give it a shot. So I'm very curious to see what they do with Legends of Runeterra when it comes out and how people will react to the new monetization system. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think. Are you excited for Legends of Runeterra? And do you feel like this new time-based unlock system for cards is a improvement on booster packs or card packs? Let me know in the comment section down below. And now let's jump into what this video is really focusing on, and that is Legends of Runeterra a new improved version on CCGs, and will it be the next evolution of gameplay? We saw a lot of card games come through the 90s and the early 2000s with Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, and how these games came together. But we also saw a simplification to the system with new games like Hearthstone, simplifying the gameplay enough where almost anyone could really get in and play, and playing up the experience itself, the visuals, the sounds, the way things land on the ground, and making it more visceral. When Legends of Runeterra was first announced, everyone mentioned that it was going to be just a Hearthstone clone. But as you'll see with the gameplay in the background here for the matches I was playing, when I jumped in and played, I was pleasantly surprised to see some new takes on how this market works. First off, most card games operate on a turn-based system in that I take a turn, I complete my turn, then you take a turn, and we swap back and forth. Games like Magic the Gathering have a lot of instant spells or abilities or cards that can go off when it's not your turn or when something is happening, and it actually has a lot more interplay because of this. However, in Legends of Runeterra, it's not a true turn-based system. Now, you'll both take turns taking actions, and usually these are very discrete and binary. You take one action, I take one action, and we go back and forth. The crux of this is that at any one time, each player is either attacking or defending, which is very different than me taking an entire turn, spending all my mana in one go. So if you are attacking, you can use your units to attack the enemy, and if you're defending, you can use your units to block. However, you can both take turns spawning units out onto the battlefield, you can both take turns using spells, and this continues out through the entire game itself. And I like this a lot better than some of the previous versions of card game mechanics, and I think it's a fun evolution to how card games are played because you're engaged the entire time. Even when you're on the defending round, you're still spawning units, you're still building your board up, and you're still engaged with what's happening. You're not sitting around waiting for the enemy to take their entire turn before they hand over the token to you. Now, what makes this interesting is the attacker can spend their entire turn deciding when they want to attack. They have what's called an attack token. When you have an attack token, it means that before your turn is officially over, you can make an attack. You can do this at the start of your turn, you can do it at the end of your turn, but you decide when you want to attack. Now remember, whether you're attacking or defending, you can still put down units and you'll still be trading off individual actions between each other. So if I just started my turn as an attacker, I can attack right away as my first action, or I can put down a unit which will then switch the control over to my defending opponent, and then they can put down a unit. And it goes back and forth until I decide to use my attacking token for that turn. And what's cool about this is you can decide whether you want to attack at the beginning when you feel like you have the most control over the battlefield, or if you want to get stronger, you can put down a unit or take a spell action. But if you do that, it will give your opponent the opportunity to react in kind. If you start your attacking turn by putting a unit down, it'll give control over to your opponent so they can do the same. And it makes it a lot more engaging and even kilter rather than just I put down 8 units and I attack you. Now the difference here is when a unit is attacking, it cannot be blocked by more than one unit. And this aspect makes it very interesting. It means you can't stack up a whole bunch of little units to kill a big unit like you can in Hearthstone. This means that putting down a big unit actually feels more impactful in Legends of Runeterra because once you do that, only one unit can block it. So what it felt like to me is during the game, the meta wasn't more around the tempo of the game and trying to get really far ahead of your opponent by controlling the battlefield. It's more about positioning and tactical decision making on each step along the way. Because I can choose to put down a unit and this allows you to put down a unit at the same time, I now have to decide when is the most perfect opportune moment to react to what's happening. There's also a lot more room for really fun interactions. One of my favorite decks that I was using was a Yasuo deck that every time I stunned or recalled a unit, Yasuo would attack that unit with a really fun animation. And so there's obviously those card game mechanics that you can build upon and make stronger, but it's not so much about the tempo as it is about trying to find the most opportune moment to take your major actions. And there's also a lot more room for these actions to be unique and interesting. Now, a little bit more about the gameplay. Decks are comprised of 1 or 2 regions. These regions are where the units come from and they play into the lore. And they also focus a lot on champion combat. So you can put 2 champions in your deck, Yasuo, Teemo, Fiora, all the units that you'd recognize from League of Legends as major champion units. They also have this mechanic where they can level up. There's a level up requirement for each of the champions, and when it's met, they get stronger in some way. For example, Braum from the Freljord region is a defender unit with 0 attack, but once he's taken 10 damage, he will level up. Not only that, but he has a mechanic where he'll regenerate his health back to full every round when the turn is completed. So there's little mechanics like that that allow you to level up your champions, and honestly, it feels like the gameplay is a lot more straightforward to think about. There's also a new spell mana mechanic. You have your mana that you build up every single round, but you have this temporary 3-slot mana that goes only for spells. Every time you cast a spell, it will attempt to use up your extra spell mana before it uses your main mana, which you can use for spawning units or doing that. And so it allows you to cast spells with more mana that you currently have, but this spell mana regenerates slowly over time. And so if you take one turn, say you have 4 mana and 3 extra spell mana, you can cast a spell that costs 7, but the next round you won't have that extra 3 spell mana to cast more spells with. And so it allows you to have these really big moments of casting something or taking a big step forward, and plays back into that timing strategy that I talked about earlier, where you're spending the whole game trying to find windows of opportunity and taking the proper action in that window, rather than spending your whole time building tempo and trying to outpace your opponent, which is where most of the Hearthstone gameplay comes from. And of course, the game just overall felt exceptionally polished. Everything had a great shine to it. The sounds were great, the visuals were great, and it had a really good ambiance that I really enjoyed when I played the game.
Heads up!
Now, in my opinion, I think this different approach to how you attack the strategy of the game will make it a lot more accessible to more players that generally don't get really into strategy games, but I'm wondering if it's going to alienate any of the players that are really into deep strategy, Magic the Gathering and Hearthstone specifically, or any other card game on the market right now that would turn them off from playing this game as their main strategy. But I'd love to hear what you think. Are you excited for Legends of Runeterra or not? And if you'd like to see more content on Legends of Runeterra, let me know. I actually recorded about 20 games in total, and so I'd be happy to make some content there. If you don't have early access to Legends of Runeterra, don't worry. They'll be giving out more of that in November when the game comes back and is live again. Currently, no one can play it as the game is shut down. They wanted to do a quick test to see what people thought of it, and they're going to make some adjustments and come back at some point in next month. So that does it for me today. I'm really excited to see what this game does for gaming as a whole and to see if it really takes on, because it is a new approach to how card games are played and has some very lofty goals on how they're going to monetize the game itself. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and I will see you in the next one.